The transport docked on Kepler Station smelled like ozone and stale coffee, and Marcus Whitfield hated every second of it. He stood in line behind 40 other passengers, duffel bags slung over one shoulder, waiting for the automated customs scanner to wave him through, like it had waved through everyone else. He was 51 years old, gray at the temples, and the only thing remarkable about him according to his file was that he drove a cargo hauler between the outer colonies and never asked questions. That was the story. Anyway, next, said the scanner drone, a floating orb with a blue optical ring. It swept its beam over Marcus's forearm, where a faded tattoo of a wolf's head curled just above his wrist, the kind of ink half the haulers in the sector wore. Bought cheap at some dockside parlor, the blue ring flickered red, then the entire terminal went dark. Emergency lighting kicked on a half-second later, bathing the customs hall in amber. Passengers murmured. A security officer, young, maybe 25, name tag reading OFC, Delgado jogged over to the frozen kiosk, tapping at its cracked display. The system's not responding, Delgado said into his wrist. I've got an error code I've never seen. Says, he squinted. Military record classified, clearance level extinct. The words hung in the recycled air like a held breath. Extinct? His supervisor's voice crackled back. That's not a tier. There's no animal called extinct. That's what it says. Marcus stood very still, hands loose at his sides, the way a man stands when he's already run the numbers and knows exactly how many ways this can go. 2 more officers arrived, hands resting near stunners they probably hoped they wouldn't need. A crowd was gathering now, phones out, because nothing draws a crowd like a man the system doesn't know what to do with, sir. Delgado said, voice steadier than his eyes. I'm going to need you to step aside. Figured you would, Marcus said mildly, and stepped aside. They ran his tattoo again. Same crash. They ran his retinal scan. The kiosk spat back 3 words in blinking red text. Archive access denied protocol silent wolf. A station administrator elbowed through the crowd, sweating despite the climate control. Silent wolf isn't in any database I have access to. I've been here 14 years. I've never seen that flag. That's because you weren't supposed to, said a new voice. Every head turned. A woman in a plain gray coat had appeared at the edge of the crowd. No rank insignia, no station badge, just a quiet authority that made the security officers instinctively straighten. She walked to the kiosk, placed her palm on a panel none of them had known was there, and the machine chirped once, softly, like it recognized an old friend. Colonel Renata Ibarra, Confederated Fleet Intelligence, retired, she said. And you, she looked at Marcus, and something in her posture shifted, softened, like a soldier greeting a ghost she'd buried 20 years ago and never stopped grieving. You're supposed to be dead, Sergeant. Been dead for a while, Marcus said. Turns out it's boring. Ibarra turned to the crowd, to Delgado, to the administrator, whose sweat had gone from nervous to genuinely alarmed. 22 years ago, during the Vesta incursion, this station, every station in this sector existed because of a black program nobody was allowed to acknowledge. 60 men and women went into the Kessler debris field to disable an automated defense grid. The enemy had turned against its own creators. 60 went in, came out. Their records weren't classified for secrecy. Her voice cracked, just slightly, just once. They were classified because the program that sent them was ordered scrubbed from history. Within a week of the operation succeeding, politically inconvenient heroism, the kind that makes people ask why it was necessary in the first place. She looked back at Marcus. The tattoo isn't a wolf. It's a howl. The last transmission the 4 of you sent back before the grid went dark was one word, repeated. Do you remember what it was, Sergeant Whitfield? Marcus's jaw tightened. For 22 years he'd driven cargo through empty space specifically, so nobody would ask him that question. Home. He said quietly. We said we were coming home. The customs hall had gone completely silent. Even the emergency lighting seemed to hold its breath. The system crashed, Ibarra said, turning back to the crowd, because there is no protocol for a file that was supposed to have been deleted from every server in Confederated space. Someone forgot to erase the biometric flag on for tattoos inked in the skin instead of servers. The fleet can delete the database. It can't delete a man. Delgado, to his credit, didn't reach for his stunner again. He just stood there, 25 years old, looking at a 51-year-old cargo hauler like he was looking at something out of a history file. Nobody had let him read, sir, he said finally. Quiet now, Should I let him through? Ibarra almost laughed. Son, this man held a debris field together with his bare hands and a dying reactor so 4,000 colonists on Kepler 7 could finish their evacuation. You don't let him through. You escort him through, and then you buy him a drink, because Fleet Command owes him about 2 decades worth. The crowd, understanding now that they'd witnessed something they'd be telling their grandkids about, began to applaud awkwardly at first, then all at once, the way people do when they realize they're standing next to something true. Marcus Whitfield picked up his duffel bag, nodded once to Ibarra like an old debt quietly settled, and walked through the dead kiosk's frozen gate into the station beyond into the ordinary, unclassified, gloriously boring life he'd spent 22 years earning the right to have. Behind him, the scanner finally rebooted, blue ring humming back to life. Utterly unaware it had just watched a legend walk home.